Hi everybody, welcome to the vlog. I wanted to vlog today about, I've kind of thought I would do like 5 things you don't know about me, but if you've been a subscriber or viewer of the channel since its incarnation, sorry, good morning, it's coffee time. You like my bunny cup? He's from the 99-cent only store. He is the perfect size. I do wish he was like straighter. I don't know. I just feel like I really like the straight side cups because I feel like I won't knock them over as easy. I know. I don't knock over coffee cups that often, so it's not like I'm not prone to klutziness, but hey, I'm getting older and things aren't always the same. So anyhow, so I thought I would come on here with 5 things you don't know about me. But like I said, if you've been here since the beginning, there's some things you may know. If you're my best friend and you're watching, or one of them, you may know, or my sisters or whatever, but I sort of wanted to make it a very intimate video. Sorry about that. That's why I came in the office. As I was adjusting it, I turned the camera off. That's why I came in the office. I got the tripod with the beauty light. Let's see. Does that look okay? Yeah, that's okay. And I really just wanted to be intimate with you guys. So, first thing is, I miss dancing. It's sort of been it's been increasingly gnawing at me. I guess that's the best way to say it. Gnawing. I'm from New York. That's what I can tell you. It's gnawing. It's been increasingly eating away at my soul to not be able to as much, actually at all. Car dancing, chair dancing, that's where my limits are, because if you don't know this about me, I've always been overweight. I'm a rainbow baby, and my mom had a stillborn the year before I was born. And I'm not saying that that's the reason that everybody fed me, but I had these big old cute cheeks, and everybody was happy to see me, and I was basically like a fat baby, a fat toddler, a fat adolescent. I've never had a thin or average day, really in my whole life. That being said, I'm very proud of myself. I'm very proud of the struggles that I've gone through and come through the other side, and the realizations that I have about myself, that my self-worth is not wrapped up in what the scale says about me. I have been on diets. My first diet I was put on when I want to say 11, but really it was before that. Excuse me. I feel like I was like 8. That my mom, started, she was doing Think Thin at the time, and, and then 11 was the first time we were in a medical, my sisters and I'm sorry, were in a medical, study for diet pills, and, I was 11, yeah, and I was going to camp, and I know myself at 48 years old. I'm very aware of what I should and shouldn't be eating, but I'm also just a human being, and I don't have any other vices. And I know people are always, not always, but often people are giving me advice and suggestions, and Candula girl, who is just like the sweetest thing, is always saying, you seem like a very intelligent girl who knows what you're doing and who knows your body. And I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, I'm not fooling myself. I know that my longevity, if I did keto, I know that I would live a lot longer, as far as the diabetes is concerned, than I would if I stay just managing it. But I also know that other problems come with, all eating plans have problems. The biggest problem has been in the last, oh boy, that's a lot of years. I was going to say the last 7 years. Was in 2011. I was dancing at a Third Day concert, which is a Christian rock group in New York, and I tore a meniscus in my knee, and it ended up getting septic. It's just like, it was Wednesday night was the concert. By Monday, I couldn't bear weight on it anymore, and I called the ambulance, which was my first ambulance ride, my first hospital visit, my first hospital stay, my first surgery. It all happened at time. And I ended up having a PICC line. I was treated for endocarditis. And actually, she thinks it was prophylactically because I didn't have any of the other symptoms, but because the staph infection was throughout my body. There's theories about how I picked up staph. I had just been on a plane a week before I hurt myself. I really hadn't had any dental work, but now I have to take a prophylactic antibiotic when I go for dental work. So it's just all these things. So after that 2011 torn meniscus and the 14 weeks of rehab, which normally rehab for a torn meniscus or surgery to repair the torn meniscus is not 14 weeks, but because of the staph infection, I couldn't have physical therapy at a normal rate. It had to, my physical therapist actually described it as, if we give you normal physical therapy, it would be like the equivalent of scratching a rash. It would just spread the bacteria quickly, and we want to make sure that bacteria is out of your system before we go ahead and do like some invasive. So I never had like electric stim. I never had like hands-on. It was all just exercise, slow and steady, stretching and slow weight bearing. And, you know, first I was on a walker and then I was on a cane. And it was a long process, and I had the PICC line the whole time, so managing that. I don't know if you've ever had one or even know what it is. Basically, I have a little tiny scar on my arm here somewhere. I feel like maybe it's gone today. But basically they did was they put like essentially like an IV, but they go straight in and wire it so that basically the antibiotic goes directly to your heart. And you know, I didn't go through that process without prejudice, because even at the hospital, you know, the nurses or nurses' assistants, and they were all like, what are you here for, a double knee replacement? Are you here for a knee replacement? Are you here for whatever? And then I was like, no, it's an injury. Like, I hurt myself dancing. Like, I guess fact number 2 about me, if you don't know, is that I started when I was, and this is along the same story. I'm not just having an ADD moment. Forgive me. But when I was 7, I joined my first softball league with my sisters. You were supposed to be 8, but I snuck in under the wire. And I played on a league on and off almost every year till I was 21. And then at 21, this little tiny thing plowed me. I was I was almost always the catcher. That was my position. And if you know anybody who plays ball, who's a catcher, if you're a fan of baseball, you know that the first thing to go on a catcher is their knees. So my knees were not always in great shape forever because of the wear and tear. So if you're not familiar with what a catcher does behind home plate, basically, I always joke, I'm like, I about 60,000 squats in my career, but it's probably even more than that, because in a game you can have up to, let's see, if there's 7, 9 people on a team, if everybody gets up to about 3 times, say that's rounded to 30. If you stand up and squat at least 3 times per person on average, because some people walk, some people get a full count, and some people hit it right off the bat. So I would average it to be 3 squats. So that's 90 squats per game. That's not even including practice. It's just 90 squats per game of actual play. And then, 3 games a week for 14 years. It just adds up. So when I went in, when I finally hurt myself to the point where I needed surgery, so everybody at the hospital, not everybody, a few people at the hospital were just questioning how I hurt myself, and just assumed, which is, I don't begrudge anybody for assuming. They're only human, but they assumed because of my weight, that's why I was in there having some sort of surgery. Excuse me. The hardest part about, I want to say getting older, or the hardest part for me is not being able to do all the things that I physically used to do. Part of that is for fear, and I do have faith in God, but I also am, precautionary. Is that the word? Is there a word like called precautionary? Yeah, right. Anyway, I am trying to be cautious of how I do basically anything. Like, I don't want to overexert it. I don't want to overextend it. I want to make sure I stretch. Before I go to the grocery store, I stretch. I know that sounds stupid, or sounds weird, or sounds lame. I don't even know what it sounds like to you, but I have to. Take some prophylactic ibuprofen, which I usually take 400 milligrams before I go to the store. That's so my muscle, and then I stretch, so my muscles are loose, so I don't have to worry about anything pulling. A lot of times I go to the grocery store and I just shop. Sometimes I go to the grocery store and halfway through shopping I have to lean on the shopping cart. Sometimes I go to the grocery store and I get out of the car and I have to lean on the shopping cart. It all depends on how I'm feeling that day. So, I do know that carrying the amount of weight that I carry does affect my joints and my body. However, that being said, I made a mention in a comment yesterday, because I had a lady address, not negatively, but address that she was concerned because she had lost her mother. But she had addressed, like, of course, do you know that carrying all that weight is not good for you? Yes, I do know that carrying all this weight is not good for me. It's the equivalent of somebody being in construction and basically just moving, or a furniture mover, just moving back and forth. It's like, but even a furniture mover has a time off where he's not carrying furniture. I get that. But I also have never known anything different. That's not an excuse. I'm not making excuses. I don't have to make excuses because I don't know anybody anything. I'm just telling you how it is. But I have been within 350 to 375 pounds for 20 years. It is like actually sometimes it's as low as 340. Sometimes it's really not very high. Not been higher than 375 in, I want to say, 20 years. I was 415 when I was Jim and I first got married, when we found out about fertility issues. So I had gained some weight then, and then I got up to the highest I've ever been was 415, and then I realized I wasn't feeling like I didn't feel good. And I wanted to do something about it. Not didn't feel good, didn't feel myself. So I wanted to do something about it. So, but really my body has just always been, I move more, I eat more, I move less, I eat less. I mean, it's just the nature of the beast. I'm not hungry. Today I'm not hungry. And it's an unusual feeling for me. But it's, it's the way it is today. I'm having my coffee. I need to take my medicine. I have to eat something with my medicine. So I actually have to, I'm postponing it because I'm almost feeling a tiny bit nauseated. So my coffee will help to see if I'll be able to keep stuff in my belly. And I never throw up. I think 3 times since I'm an adult. And all of those were alcohol induced. Actually, it's not true. Two times I was actually physically ill because of the stomach flu. Once because of the alcohol. Anyhow, but anyway, I feel like I'm heading down that rabbit hole, and I really did have my thoughts all prepared. Just mentioned that throwing up part. So today, do you hear the birds? Today I'm gonna eat later. I did some DIYs last night, And I've lost my train of thought again. Is that terrible? So we were talking about my weight. We're talking about weight gain. We're talking about the lady. Oh, okay. So, one of the things that I mentioned to her in the comments was that, first of all, approach every person as an individual. You know, not every fat person is fat for the same reason. They're not. Maybe they mostly are. Maybe they aren't. I don't know. I haven't really asked every single person why they are the way they are. It's not something that interests me. And not that I don't care about people, but it doesn't, I don't see their weight. I don't see that. Like, you know, if I was describing somebody's physical attributes, it would be one thing. But I don't look at somebody and be like, this is my fat friend. This is my skinny friend. This is my, you know, that's not how I look at people like that. So anyway, not every fat person is, or obese person, or overweight person is for the same reason. So I said to her, think about this. And I don't know if you have all thought about this before. But considering people who are overweight and are in pain, realize that not everybody is in pain because they're overweight. Some people are overweight because they're in pain. Now what I mean by that is there are people who, my brother is a perfect example. My brother was a police officer. Well, he's retired. My brother was a police officer. He always loved to eat. He was a football player in high school, and he was a construction worker, and he really just always did love to eat. But when he was an active duty police officer, it was not a problem because he was eating the calories that he was burning off. Like, he needed those calories. He was chasing bad guys and you know, taking training classes and all these things. But then he had gotten injured on the job. He hurt his rotator cuff. He pulling a perpetrator off the car or whatever. And he was put into sort of a desk job. He became a property clerk. And he no longer had that physical activity, but he still had that appetite. So he's a perfect example of somebody who has gained weight because of an injury, because of the pain, because he can no longer work and physically move the way he used to. And then it gets to the point, your body gets to the point where it like levels off. So unless you have a drastic diet change, a drastic surgical intervention, or something, and I say drastic because, you know, any little changes you make in your body at this weight, it lasts only so long. So we were doing gluten-free. We started doing gluten-free a couple of months ago, I guess it's now. It might be a couple months ago. And only for certain days. And I did notice immediately like a weight loss drop because my body, basically your body gets into this metabolic cycle. And anytime you like jar the cycle, your body's weight could go up and down. So I noticed that my body went down because of the gluten-free aspect. I was eating a lot less carbohydrates in general. Complex carbohydrates in general, excuse me. So I noticed that like a change immediately, but it leveled off very, very quickly. I think I've only been doing it, like I said, a couple of months, and after just a couple of weeks, it basically no more. Like, I didn't change my eating habits. It's just no more like weight loss. So you got to know yourself. You know, I've done, let's see, we did Think Thin. We went to OA. We did OA is Overeaters Anonymous. We tried that when I was a teenagers. We were in Weight Watchers, gosh, 4 times. I say we, but I did Weight Watchers 4 times because I always went with somebody. That wasn't dependent on going, but people would always ask me to go with them to help encourage them. And then, you know, like, okay, I'll give it a shot again or whatever. Let's see if the new program works for me. And then, of course, the diet, being a diabetic, then you know, that diet's really, the food that I've been eating there has pretty much the same since I was diagnosed in 2010. Now, let's go back to diets, okay? So somebody had mentioned all of the crap that I haul, all the junk food that I haul. There's a couple of things I want to mention. If you watch all of my videos, you know we don't always haul junk food. A lot of the comments were made after the hauls when we were going to Texas. So let me rewind this story a little bit. Okay. If you've been around for a little bit, you probably know this story. I used to live in New York. I lived in Long Island, and I grew up on Drake's Cakes, snack cakes. If you know Hostess or Little Debbie's, that's the kind of snack cakes I was talking about. I was never really a chip person. I like pretzels and cheese doodles, like salt as far as my salties. I really never cared for potato chips. Every once in a blue moon, I would care for potato chips, but it was really, really rare. Doritos, I like those. Tortilla chips, I like those. Anyhow, we grew up on Drake's Cakes. So when I moved here in 2013, even when I lived in New York and I was diagnosed with diabetes, I severely limited the amount of snack cakes that I had. Did I cut them out entirely? No. No. Because first of all, the whole point of life is balance. Before I was diagnosed with diabetes, I would sit down to Drake's Cakes and I'd have like 4 devil dogs in a sitting. There's 10 in the box. You sometimes 3, and then 2, whatever. It depends on what I was feeling like. 4, 3, and 3, whatever. Depending on the mood, depending on what I ate that day, depending on how much of a sweet tooth I had for the moment. But really, sweets are my downfall. Like, that's my thing. And when I moved here, they didn't have them anymore. When I first moved here, the closest place you'd have to drive to was Pennsylvania. But they eventually started coming west a little bit. 2 years ago, I found them in Ohio. Actually, they were in Indiana on my way home from Ohio. And then last year they started coming. They were in St. Louis, which I was like floored. So I used to make these trips to first they were at the Target and then they were at the Walmart in Baldwin, Missouri, which is like the only city. Baldwin, Missouri is the only city in around St. Louis, the little suburb, that has them. Had them, I should say. I haven't checked the website lately because I know I could still get them there. So what I would do is if I took a trip in with Aunt Sue, I would go ahead and I'd stock up. So if you watch my hauls, I haul everything I buy pretty much. I mean, if I ran to Aldi just to get milk, I wouldn't share it with you. Like if milk and eggs, that's boring or whatever. But anything beyond that, I normally would share it even if it's a small haul. So if you see me buy Drake's Cakes in February and then you don't see me buy them again until March, that's a month, like a month of whatever. And I'm not the only person who eats them. That's one thing. When I go to, and I won't deny that they're not a trigger food. Like I have to consciously make an effort to control the intake of them. Like to the point where sometimes it's even just like I freeze my devil dogs because that's how good they are to me, that I would just sit and mindlessly eat them. So I put them in the freezer, and what I do is when I'm ready to have them after dinner or before I start cooking dinner, I take 1 or 2 out of the freezer depending on what I'm making for dinner that day. That's another thing that depends on my carbohydrate intake for the day. Depends on what I can have for a snack. Anyway, so I pull 1 or 2 out of the freezer and I leave them on my side table for after dinner. Now I am a person who likes to have something sweet after I eat. Sometimes it's chewing gum, sometimes it's sugar-free candy, sometimes it's just drinking my coffee with creamer. Sometimes that helps, like after breakfast. I don't usually always have like a snack or something. I sometimes just drink my coffee. Anyhow, when I was heading down to Texas, all of the people that I visit in Texas all used to live in New York, and they also grew up on Drake's Cakes. So at Christmas time, I made an effort of bringing everybody something. When I went in the summertime was the first time I had just started discovering them. And I had brought some things with me because I was going to be there the whole time. Like I was going to be there for weeks and weeks. And while I was there, I discovered that everybody else missed them as well. So at Christmas time, I went ahead to the store and I stocked up to get everybody some Drake's cakes for Christmas. And then when I was going back in for the baby's first birthday for March, I made sure that I stocked up again and made sure I brought everybody something. So, that being said, just because you see me haul it does not mean you're going to see me eat it, okay? That's where I was getting to. The truth about Mom's Twinkies, and I'm not saying that Mom's a selfish person, but Mom keeps her Twinkies in her room. She likes to have these snacks in the middle of the night, whatever, her Fritos, all of the food that we see, like I say I get from Mom, she keeps in her room, unless they're frozen. She doesn't have a freezer in there. Her soda and her yogurts and stuff she keeps in the refrigerator and freezer, but for like all of her snack cakes, all her snack foods, all her chips and stuff, they stay in her room. So if you see me haul Twinkies from Mom, then they're Twinkies from Mom, so it's not like I'm sharing them anyway. But yeah, I mean, out of all the Drake's cakes that I buy, I like the Devil Dogs, fudge covered Devil Dogs. I like Funny Bones, and I like coffee cakes, the little coffee cakes. I don't eat them all. Like Jimmy loves the Ring Dings, and he eats the Ring Dings, and the Yankee Doodles, and he eats the Yankee Doodles. Actually, I had a Yankee Doodle. He's like, they taste different. And I had a Yankee Doodle, and they are different. If you're a Drake's Cakes connoisseur, or if you're from Drake's and you're watching this video, I know I'm onto you. So Yankee Doodles, when I was growing up, used to be basically the same cake that was in a Devil Dog, just in a cupcake form. And it used to have like a cupcake with a mound on top. You know, like not a mound of food, just like a domed cupcake. They are now like a flat cupcake. They're almost like the cupcake that's underneath a Hostess cupcakes. You know, the Hostess cupcakes with the frosting and the white swirl. So if you peeled off the frosting, that's the kind of cupcake that's now in, that's not what a Yankee Doodle is. But Yankee Doodles were not those. Yankee Doodles were the same kind of cake texture that is a Devil Dog, but it was in a cupcake form. Same thing with the cream. The cream was the same too. And that is different. That's one thing that's changed in, gosh, what year was it? I don't remember exactly what year it was because it was like traumatic, but Hostess had bought Drake's. And then Hostess went bankrupt. Do you remember that? When they stopped having Twinkies and then they came back. But now McKay, who makes Little Debbie's, they distribute or own or whatever Drake's. So I don't know. I can tell the difference with that. But really, that so far is the only thing that I can taste the difference in. Everything else seems to be pretty much the same. I miss Swiss rolls, not Little Debbie Swiss rolls. And it's funny because I remember Rosie O'Donnell on an episode of her show back in the day where she was talking to them. Because she used to give Drake's cakes in her shows. She used to put them under everybody's seat or something like that. And so seasonally, they would come out with something called a Swiss roll, but it was basically like a Yodel or like a Little Debbie's kind of Swiss roll. No chocolate on top, but it was like one cake you got, and it was this big. And it was like this long, and it was like this wide around, and it sat on the cardboard. And it was just basically, you had to, I mean, I don't know how you ate it, but I used to unroll it, take pieces off, and that's how you eat it. Anyway, enough of the snack cake connoisseur talk, 101:17. Well, it was a half an hour. Hi, guys. Anyway, so that is a few things that you didn't know about me. That's a few things I would please remind you not to be presumptuous or sumptuous when it comes to people. I mean, it's kind of an old adage, never just judge a book by its cover. You really don't know what someone's going through until you get to know them, and not everybody's the same. You know, I mean, it's oddly enough, it doesn't bring race to mind, but it does make me think of that because, you know, you don't want to be judged by the way you look or the color of your skin. You don't want to be judged by your weight or your size either. I mean, that's side story because there's not enough stories on there. When I worked for AHRC back in I want to say it was in the aughts, so in the early turn of the century, we took a diversity class. Diversity training it was, and it was a course. It was a couple of days or a week or something. Anyway, they put these big signs up. And the sign said gender, size, oh, ethnicity, color, language, maybe ethnicity and language, religion. Basically, there's big signs. And what they asked you to do as a group is they asked you to stand under how you identified yourself first. You know, first, second, and third. Write down what you want, first, second, and third, and then they wanted you to stand under the sign. And then they went around the room and they talked to everybody. The first place that I stood was undersized. Me and a very, very short little old lady. So she asked me why. And I said, well, here's the thing. I belong to the last socially acceptable, oh my goodness, I just lost the train of thought again. Oh, I belong to the last socially acceptable discriminatory group in the world, like the United States, the world. And she said, what do you mean? I said, well, you know, and this was in New York in the turn of the new century. So I said, you can't make fun of the gay guy. You can't make fun of the black guy anymore. You can't make fun of the old people, but you sure as heck can make fun of the fat chick when she walks in the room. So if you've never been overweight, you have no idea what I'm talking about, but it is true. I mean, airline seats, theater seats. My brother and I, who was also a big guy, but my brother's also very tall, my little brother, we had gotten tickets to go see Les Mis in the last row in the theater. And the theater seats were not only so tight, but they were so, for short people, that we had to sit, he had to sit, scooch to the edge of his seat with his legs like splayed. Not his whole legs, like he had his knees bent. So his knees were like hugging the seat in front of him. And I had to like try to sit next to him. And it was like impossible, to the point where we left at the intermission and didn't go back because we couldn't sit there anymore. Sports arenas, like I said, theaters is a big one. Not movie theaters so much anymore. But even movie theaters, you know, we go, or we went. Now it's different. Now we have these luxurious recliners. But, you know, not that long ago in my lifetime, we went and I would have to go just by looking at the seat. That one's going to be too small. That one's too big. Restaurants, you know, I like a half and half. If you never heard of half and half, that's the booth. That's the one that's like a booth on one side and chairs on the other. The reason I like that is because normally the tables move. And the bench is usually sturdy enough that I don't have to worry about creaking on a chair. Because not all restaurants have very sturdy chairs, I'll tell you the truth. And it's not necessarily even that I weigh that much, but it's that I'm that hard on my furniture. The reason I'm hard on my furniture is because of my knees. They give out. I don't really have... when I was younger and I told you I missed dancing, I used to do like real slow, drop it like a top, but like drop it real slow, you know, and just get down, down, down. I just don't have the strength in my knees to do that anymore. So I can't really decline slowly. I can't really sit slowly unless I have like real good table support. Otherwise, I kind of have to like plop a little bit. And I try to do it daintily as possible. But still, it's, you know, whether you're... I see Jimmy do it, and he's not overweight. I mean, he's got a gut, but maybe he is overweight, but he's not morbidly obese. But I just see like, you just have to come down, like, you don't have the strength to go down slowly. Anyway, I like to sit on the booth side. We like to move the table. Mom likes a chair, so it really works out. But even those, like, so if the table is fixed and it's a booth, I can't always... Sometimes my girls have to sit up on the table because the booth is so, like, close to the... I'm in my steak, if you know what I'm saying. Oh. Girls, ladies, gentlemen, whoever's watching this, please. I hope you're having a good time. Oh, man. Talking to you guys is like talking to a girlfriend. Just like get on the phone and start complaining about all the things. No, just kidding. So anyway, that's how we're we're discriminated as against. Plus, well, we won't talk about clothes. If you guys could see the frock that I had to wear to my 8th grade prom, because plus size clothes were not made for women younger than 30 when I was 13 and I needed plus size clothes. When I was younger, I shopped at the chubby section at Alexander's. Alexander's was a department store and they had a chubby section. They did. That's where I got my communion gown. But most of the time I just wore hand-me-downs. However, I was like, okay, I still am. I have very short legs for my height. I'm very tall in the torso. I'm only 5'6¾", which I like, if I have to, round it up to 5'7", which is the average height of a woman in America. So, and I tell everybody I could still touch my toes because my legs are so short. I don't have a problem touching my toes, and I can. I used to be able to palm the floor like when I was younger, and my knees were good because I used to have to, you have to lock your knees back to get that way. Anyway, I'm all over the place with this story. I'm so sorry. Makes me want to rewind it just to say what I was talking about. Chubby section at Alexander's. How did I get to bending down? Oh, the way I'm built. Never mind. So, getting hand-me-downs was one thing, but so for me, it was like having pants that fit. Even though I was an average height, having pants that fit, if I got a regular, they would be like dragging on the floor because my legs are short. So it was just a lot of like, I get hand-me-downs, nothing ever fit. How can anything ever fit? My cousin, not to this day, because I haven't really spoken to her in probably 10 years, she would mention the fact that my first bra was her old bra. Like her old bra when I was 14 and I started wearing my first bra, it was one of her old ones. And it wasn't made from my body type or size or whatever, but I just did what I could do. Like, this is what I had, this is what I worked with. Anyway. You guys always ask me, how do I get through tough times? And it's because I've been through tougher times. That's the truth. That's the truth. I think about stories like this where I had to get my bra from my cousin. I had to eat my food my lunch out of the garbage. So if you went to school with me, forgive me for saying it like this, but when you might not know the story, you might know the story. When I was growing up, I tell everybody as an impact statement that I ate my lunch out of the garbage. Now, here's how the story really goes. We almost never had lunch money or lunch, period. It's sort of a running joke with my sister that I say we either had peanut butter and jelly and no bread, or bread and no peanut butter and jelly. We either had cereal and no milk, milk and no cereal. I mean, it just never worked out. And I say never, but obviously, I don't mean the infinite never. I mean almost never. Almost always we were lacking in food. So what would happen was there would be kids who would get like a bagged lunch or boxed lunch plus money. And then they would throw their lunch in the garbage and buy lunch instead. Well, towards the beginning of all the school years, or when you first start elementary school, the lunch aides would take out whole bags of lunch. Like kids would literally take their paper bag and throw it in the garbage. And they would look inside and make sure that it was all not touched type of thing. And then they would take it and they would put it on the windowsill for kids like me who didn't have lunch. And this was my school. My school may have had a lunch program, but my parents never asked for what they would consider a handout. They would rather us starve. In hindsight, not a good idea. I understand there's a pride thing, but in hindsight, yeah, probably should have asked for help. And I did get help in high school. And I don't know that my mother didn't know. Maybe she possibly didn't know that there was a program until we were in high school. But anyway, I digress. So after like the first couple of weeks of school, kids would know that if you didn't want your lunch, you gave it to the lunch aide or you put it on the windowsill yourself. So on a regular basis, that's where I got my lunch from. If my till I was 12, I lived with my nanny, lived with us, and she used to collect Kennedy half dollars, which, if you don't know, is a 50-cent piece with President Kennedy on it. I often joked because he was Irish and she was very Irish, that's why, but it was just a way of she would have money that she wouldn't very readily want to spend. You know, she would basically, if I feel like me, if I have dollars, I lose dollars, if you know what I mean. So one of the things that my mom always gave us to collect was $2 bills. So she's like, it's currency, it's good currency, but you won't spend it on, you know, you won't go take up to the store and get a pack of gum. You'll save it for an emergency. And she was right. Anyway, so my nan sometimes would give us the 50-cent piece if I mentioned that there was no lunch on the, like we didn't have lunch yesterday, if there was no lunch on the windowsill, because not every day kids had lunch, you know, like whatever, or there was lunch there. So if we didn't have lunch yesterday, or if we didn't have breakfast and we didn't have lunch yesterday, like the combination, she would say, you know, take this 50-cent piece. And for 50 cents, when I was growing up, you could get like a milk and a sleeve of chocolate chip cookies, or a sleeve of sandwich cookies, really. They were like the vanilla sandwich cookies, because that was 25 cents. And it was the only thing you could afford for 50 cents was milk and cookies. And then there were times where, you know, it was after Christmas and you had gotten cash for Christmas and you were like able to afford what they called a steak sandwich, which was like a hamburger patty on an onion roll, which was so good. I'd like want to go back in time just to have one. But anyway, so, you know, we were lucky enough to do that from time to time. Speaking of also not being nutritioned properly, is I was in a marching band. So when I was 11, I joined the Sacred Heart Lamplighters. Sacred Heart was the Catholic church that I grew up in. They sponsored a marching band that in the 70s, they were lamplighters. They had like, we had like, when I first started, it was like the triangle Minuteman helmets, hats, little dickies, and I think I have a picture on my Facebook page. I actually think I put a picture in a video. And then while I was in the band, we did fundraisers to get new uniforms and stuff like that. So anyway, I played the baritone, and then, well, I played the French horn for 5 minutes, and I was not good at it. I played the baritone, but then I went to play the bass drum, and that's primarily what I did for most of my career. I was in the band from the time I was 11 till I was 18. And that was a ton of walking. It was marching. It was marching in practice. Tuesday night practice was usually up in the music rooms where we would learn new music or practice on music, and then we would come down and practice concert style. And then Fridays was like marching practice, where we would like practice in marching around the parking lot or practice marching around the gym if it was the winter time. And that was to get like step in line and that like this. And we were in competitions. We were a drum and bugle corps that was played for different fire departments throughout the, I want to say state, but mostly it was on Long Island that we would travel. And then the state parade was always, the state firemen's convention, we'd always march in the state parade, and that was a big deal if we won the state in our division, which we did a few times. So anyway, we would go to parades, and I knew that they always had water. We would take a bus. We'd have to have our uniform like pressed and clean, shoes polished, and the whole bit. So I would walk to my house, which wasn't terribly far. I think if I mapped it out for you guys, it wasn't terribly far to the from my house to the Sacred Heart Parish. But it was still a walk. So I would walk with my uniform bag and my hat bag, and then I would have a bag that I carried. Since I played the bass drum, I was responsible for my strap and my mallets. So I made sure I had them with me. And then whatever else stuff that I needed. So I would carry that, and I would walk that to the parish center. When I was playing the baritone, I used to have to take that with me every day. So by the time I would get there, I'm sure I didn't have breakfast because we didn't have food for breakfast then. Even in the like mid late 80s, it was a little bit more rare, like, you know. But um, we would be responsible to have lunch with us or take lunch with us or buy lunch while we were out at the parade or whatever. And that never happened. Even only as often as I would get a babysitting job on a Friday night, which was very rare because I had band practice. The only way I'd get a Friday night babysitting job is if it was after band practice, which ended at like 7:30, and then it was like for late at night. But if I had money from like babysitting or whatever, I was able to get lunch. Most everybody went to the deli that was across the street, and they would get like their heroes and their drinks and their snacks, and I usually had $1. I knew that they provided water. The people who ran, basically the band leaders, the adults who ran the band, they always provided water bottles for us, or water, you know, back in the day before water bottles were a big thing, you know, water in cups and big pitchers or whatever. Because I wanted us to stay hydrated, because this is talking about marching around miles in polyester in the summertime. I mean, it's just, you needed water. So I knew there was always going to be water, so I would, for $1, I was able to afford like 2 sleeves of cookies. I couldn't get a sandwich. You couldn't get a like deli meat. You couldn't even get $1 worth of bologna. It wouldn't even fill you up or whatever. So, yeah, so I got like 2 sleeves of cookies, and I would eat one for lunch and then maybe like one on the way home, because we would march, we would change, we would eat lunch, and then we would go and parade, not party. If you've ever been to a parade where there's a fireman's parade, they have like a carnival or whatever, then we would do that. That's what I'm saying. We would go around and do that, and then we would come back and take the bus home. So a lot of times I would save that second sleeve for the bus ride home, so I get home and eat dinner or whatever. But it's just the way it is. I'm not complaining. I'm not asking you to feel sorry for me. I'm just telling you how it was when we were growing up. My parents didn't prioritize nutrition. Let's put it that way. It was something I had to learn as an adult, and then, you know, as you get older, it's not always something you can really do about it as easily. Anyhow. Yeah. Good times. I was actually just talking to a friend about, I would love to have like a band reunion. We talk about our high school reunions, and I'm like, oh, I'd love to get like the Lamplighters together for like one last concert or something. My mom did that as an adult. My mom played the trumpet in her school band when she was growing up, St. Camilla's, and in Rockaway Beach. And when she was an adult, she was like an adult. The Pope came back. I guess it was like, I feel like it was like 86-ish, maybe 84, 86, 88, somewhere around there. And then my mother would have been like 40, in her 40s. They all got back together and they played for the Pope. Just like whatever alumni could come. It was so fun. I remember her spirit just really picked up, you know. But I often wish we could do that. Now, I still remember, well, first of all, keeping time. I got the rhythm in me, sister. But I still remember, like, Uptown Girl. I don't think I had the most complicated musical pieces to the marching band. But when we did concerts, I had more. Because when we marched, I kept time. I had to, like, literally keep the beat everybody was supposed to step on. But when we played concerts, they gave me a little bit of, like, I got to do some things, you know. It was fun. And again, I don't say this to anybody for them to feel bad for me, and trust me, I'm okay with it. I'm not angry with my parents about the choices that they made. They did the very best that they could. And as soon as they recognized the things that they were doing and the impacts that they had, they changed the best that they could. And it's funny because a lot of times that helps me not judge people, because a lot of times that the person going through the situation can see what they can see the way they can see it. You know, people talk about like, oh, your mom smokes in the house. Well, first of all, it's just Jim's mom. And just to clarify, people have asked me lots before. But this is her house technically. The mortgage is in her name. The deed's in her name. Though we pay just as much to live here, it's technically her house. Regardless of the fact that it's technically her house, out of respect for her, I would still allow her to smoke in the house. I wouldn't. She doesn't smoke in my car out of respect for me, but I do, you know, it's her house as much as it is mine. Now, I feel like I'm respectful of the fact that she's allergic to fragrance, so I don't try not to air freshen her a lot. But there are some things that I do, especially when company's coming, or if it's overwhelming. In the wintertime, it's harder because we can't open the house up. You know, but it gets to be overwhelming at times. But I do understand where she's coming from. Like I said before, I don't have any other vices but eating. But I know that I'm addicted to carbohydrates. I'm addicted to my oral fixation. You know, that's why if I'm not eating and I'm hungry and I'm trying not to eat more, I'll chew gum like crazy. You know, I just be like chew, 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 because I'm addicted. I'm not going to deny that at all. Food addiction is almost probably the worst. I'm not judging anybody's addiction, but I feel like it's one of the worst addictions because, you know, you can go to rehab and they can give you steps to not take drugs, and you can actually remove yourself from places that have drugs available. You can go live in the woods, but you gotta eat, you know? You gotta eat to live. So it's always, I felt always like the hardest thing. You know, you can avoid friends with alcohol. You can avoid alcohol. You can avoid people who consume alcohol. It might not be easy. It might not be fun, but you can do it. But you can't avoid the food. So, yeah, this has been a long, rambling session. I was trying to think of what else I wanted to tell you that was things you didn't know about me. Did I say about the marching band? About eating, about diets, about how I hurt myself, about, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things. I'm going to leave it at that today. I was going to mention this whole thing, like talk about family and all these things, but I'm not, we'll save that for another day, I think. Yeah. So, that's it. This really, really long talk. Hopefully you enjoyed getting to know me a little bit better. I hope you do. This video is probably going to be unedited, so you'll probably have a few times where the phone rang through. But I can put it on silent today because I'm actually waiting for a phone call. So I apologize about that. But I want to thank you all for listening, for caring enough to watch, and for all your support in this channel, because this channel's growing and I'm almost ready to monetize and start earning money, which is going to be great. I'm excited. So that's it. And as always, take care. God bless. See you next time. Bye.